Good afternoon. This is Yasmin Maddox, and we're going to begin in just one moment. I see that we have some audio just getting set up. So I'll just give it a few seconds, and then we will be, as they say, off to the races. And if I haven't said it already, and I don't believe I have, happy Saturday. Hope it's a good one so far. All right, well, let's get started in the interest of time. I am Yasmin Maddox. It's good to see you all this afternoon, because it's officially afternoon. I am the founder and CEO of Architect, a company that creates web-based professional advancement tools for working parents. And as I have mentioned previously, we are, and we have been working with Pathstone, partnering with Pathstone to provide you as childcare providers the information, resources, and tools so that you can be better off not only in the fall, but beyond, and so that you can be more sustainable and serve working families in a way that is improved, and that in a way that really lives up to your expectations without causing a whole lot of drama, to use that term, considering that this has been an unprecedented and rough, to use that term, year. So without further ado, this is the third and final of this webinar series. It's marketing, positively differentiating your childcare business in a COVID-19 world. All right. So our agenda has four main sections, or components. First, it's all about your website, what your website should accomplish. And if you don't have a website, no fear, no worries there. We can help you get one started, and I will be doing an exercise just to show you some neat things. Secondly, we're going to be going over effectively conveying your public health conscious differentiators. Third, community networks and entrepreneurial service providers to really bring this all together for you now that you've had several hours of information and resources that have been brought to you. And then finally, the benefits of membership or subscription to childcare platforms as a supplemental tool to helping you on your marketing journey. All right, so here we go. First, you could put it in the chat, or you can say it, no problem. Do you have a website? If you can let me know with a yes or a no. And I'll type it in the chat as well. Do you have a website? The reason I'm asking this is to see, one, if you have a website, and to see if you use this website as the main gateway for people, primarily for prospective client families and for current client families, to find information about what you're doing and what you offer. Okay, thank you. Thanks for that answer. So whether you have one or not, you're gonna, be given information today about how to put it all together. But ultimately, let's start from a framework of understanding why you should have one. Overwhelmingly, the vast majority of people, including parents that are seeking out information on childcare providers that they ultimately hope to hire, go to see if they have a website first. It's crucial that you have one, and you can put a really aesthetically appealing website together in about, less than a day, even a few hours, depending on what type of hosting you're using. So for instance, we're going to be using Squarespace today because they have so many wonderful templates that really set you up for success. But ultimately, what your website should accomplish It should accomplish these objectives both as a standalone and as a supplement to your listings on childcare platforms, which I'll go into really at the tail end of the webinar. So first objective is to provide a centralized online location for parents to find childcare assistance and to understand the type you offer. So for instance, do you provide standard or traditional hours? Do you provide care during non-traditional hours? So when we think of standard hours, really we're thinking about 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., which coincides with what many refer to as before or after hours care. So, mom and dad, or mom or dad, whomever, has to get to work, but they have to get to work before they can reasonably drop off their children to, school, whatever the case may be, or, whatever they need to do. And so they will have extra hours to do that with a childcare provider who maybe opens up at 6 a.m., right? And then they go off and they do what they need to do for the day. And then they can come back oftentimes no later than 6 p.m. to pick up their children. But then there are also providers who have non-traditional hours, which could include overnight hours. Increasingly, this is something that parents are finding they are interested in, especially for people who work in industries that have a lot of shift jobs. So for instance, parents and guardians working in the healthcare industry, parents and guardians working in law enforcement, where there is a much higher need for childcare that goes beyond those standard hours. Because for many families, especially those who are in healthcare, they may be home all day, but need assistance overnight. So something to think about if you do not provide non-traditional hours. It's something to look into to see if it's something you feel comfortable providing. Your website should facilitate the first steps to a good rapport with families. You want to share a bit about yourself, list a bio and a headshot. The more staff photos, the better. So the name of the game is really providing visuals. As humans, we really thrive on being able to visualize information to the degree that we are able to accomplish that. Ensure you have a no-fuss payment gateway with flexible options. So especially these days where there's more so than previously a real premium on cleanliness, which perhaps sounds terrible, but it's the truth. A lot of vendors, a lot of merchants have really cut down on their use since COVID arrived on cash payments. So if you know that you primarily deal with cash or with checks, whatever the case may be, see if you can, have a website that takes care of all the payments through a trusted payment gateway. This could be Stripe. This could be directly through your bank if they provide that service. This could be through PayPal. There are endless options, it seems, but ultimately one of the things you want to do when you get to that point is to look at the rates that they charge you once you've collected funds to actually send those funds to your bank account. You want to make sure that you are forthright about your record. Do you have a stellar one, or do you have serious issues? So this is a tricky one, right? Because nobody wants to be in the vulnerable position of revealing some major horrors, perhaps. But honesty really is the best policy. And if you are a licensed or registered childcare provider, you already know that your record is public record. It's just a matter of whether the parents who are seeking out your services potentially know where to find that information. Now, this advice depends a lot on what you have going on in your compliance history. But in general, if you are going to provide reviews of your services, which you absolutely should, you want to make sure that you temper the positive with the not so positive, especially if there are things that you've been improving on, especially if there are things that you are doing much better at and you have an actual plan, so to speak, or a plan of attack to steadily improve and kick up your customer service a notch, depending on whatever violations you may have had. So again, honesty is the best policy. You have to decide for yourself what you feel comfortable with. But parents are increasingly savvy with the information that they are seeking out, and they're actually able to find online about childcare providers' histories. So in all, your website should accomplish the following: providing of a centralized location for parents to find information about your services. You should facilitate the first steps to a good rapport. So visual cues are very powerful, and we'll get into a bit of the science of how powerful and how quickly people or site visitors have before they effectively bounce, to use that term. There's a higher bounce rate if they don't find what they want. You want to ensure that you have a no fuss payment gateway with flexible options, so that if you have openings and somebody's like, you know what, I want to use your services, then they can set it up very quickly and pay you. And then be forthright about your record. Okay. So again, a visual and videographic presentation of your facility is also helpful when you're marketing your services, especially when you're marketing them online. If you have an in-home childcare business, you want to know, or you want to ask, how can you demonstrate that you've taken the added and targeted precautions needed when providing care in your home that address various security and safety concerns? So there is a difference between offering care in-home versus in a center. Both setups can be absolutely wonderful for a number of reasons. Both setups have their own unique logistical challenges. Case in point, with in-home care, we already know that a home, unless you build it as such, a home typically is for living. 9 times out of 10, right? And again, unless you specifically built your home to also house your business, there are different considerations that come into play. So if you are an in-home provider, you want to think about safety concerns that are perhaps related more so to lead paint, if you are in a dwelling that's a certain number of years older. Or you want to think about the layout of rooms, especially now that we're talking about COVID and preparing to have spaces that allow for physical or social distancing. So all of the considerations that we talked about in the second webinar, those come into play in terms of how you communicate them on your website. So you don't need to write out much of anything, but you should be showing through photos, and not through grainy photos, but through clear photos and detailed photos, what your facility looks like. Now, the opposite side of this coin is that while you want to show some indication of what your facility looks like, you don't want to give too much information so that everybody, to use the term, knows your business, okay? With center-based care, it's the same setup in terms of you want to provide some visuals, but you don't want to provide everything that you have so people know everything about what the inside of your facility looks like. Even though we want to assume good intent, there are people who don't have the best intent. So you always have to have that fine balance between being open and showing, and also keeping some things close to the vest. So where are you located? Are you near shops or services that are helpful to parents? Something that was interesting to me when I was conducting research for this webinar, and that I saw in data from surveys, is that parents want to know, of course, not only what your facility looks like, but where you are located, not only on account of crime statistics potentially, but on account of amenities. So for instance, are you located in a shopping plaza or a shopping strip? If you are, what else is there? Is there a Price right there? Is there a Tops? Is there a Wegmans across the street? Are there services and providers that as a parent, I already use and I already know that I need on a daily perhaps or a weekly basis, that I can add as part of my routine and say, okay, well, this provider isn't near really anything else that can help me, but this other provider is not only near a bunch of places like a supermarket or a bank, but they've also shown me where they are in relation to these other places. And so now I have more information at my disposal, so I can plan a routine that's more efficient for my life, and that will let me get some of my time back. So your website shouldn't just be a focus on you, though it mostly should be. It should also demonstrate that you are thinking more about the whole well-being of the client families that you serve, and that includes making sure that they can recapture their time during the day by knowing not only where you are located, but also where services and amenities that can help them are located in relation to you, in close proximity to you. So, from the perspective or a point of view of a parent, do I stay or do I go? What happens when prospective parents go to your site? And I am focusing on, prospective parents or prospective client families because presumably the relationship is different with those who you've already secured as clients, right? They know about you, they know your facility, they know the type of care you provide. You've already established the relationship. But for those who are just trying to get information about you, what happens? So for those, who have a website, this is obviously applicable to you. For those who don't, we're going to start from scratch and really in maybe 10 minutes or less put together a website based on what we already know to be true and what we know to be true based on how we interact with websites when we first arrive at them. So as a parent, I'm first going to likely conduct some kind of search, right? And that search is usually going to include terms like daycare or childcare in my city, right? If I have any number of Google Chrome location, settings turned on, Google knows exactly where I am, so I don't need to specify what city I'm in. They already know. But some parents very well will say, a search of childcare or daycare in Rochester, New York, or in Brighton, New York, or whatever the case may be. So they do that. They get search results. Oftentimes, most people don't go beyond the second page of results. If you want to do well in getting your results on the first or second pages, then you have to really have good SEO, search engine optimization, in terms of the terms that you use, okay? And I do have a handout for that you will get. So I arrive at your site. I stay if I see something that I like immediately, and that's your home page. And then I look for the following: reviews, which should be front and center, pictures, which I mentioned, schedule and curriculum. So what does a day in the life of my child in your care look like? Are they just sitting off in a corner? Are they just on electronic devices the whole time? Or are they coloring? Are they engaged in some kind of form of socially distanced circle time? Are they working on their ABCs? Are they doing something productive with their time? Or are they doing something that is not so productive? Curriculum. If you have a curriculum, whatever that may be, especially for the littlest ones, what does that look like? Is it based on the children in your care really being self-motivated and playing with toys as they are motivated to do so? Or do you take a more formalized approach? What does your business offer? Let parents know very clearly, very explicitly. Your staff roster. So who works for you? One of the biggest issues that comes up is not so much that not only that there's not enough information about the owner operator, but also that there's not enough information about the staff. On any day, if you as the owner operator are not the primary person who is going to be working and caring for the children in your care, then you have to provide enough information about those who are actually doing that task for parents to feel comfortable. Stats on turnover. This is a new one that's come about. It's certainly one that's discussed, often among parents, and this goes under word of mouth marketing. One of the biggest issues that comes up with poor reviews, especially if you go on to a Yelp, for instance, or even Google, which you can find, but Yelp, the information is aggregated a bit better. One of the most common themes about lack of customer service, lack of attention, lack of supervision, all of these things, you find them also with issues that former employees will note about pay, but also issues that former employees or current employees will note about turnover. Parents want to know, do you have very high turnover, or are you still rocking with the same crew that you've had for the last 2, 3, 4 years? Now, obviously, the nature of the childcare industry is that there is turnover for a host of reasons, some of which are within your control, but many of which are beyond your control. But you want to, as best as you can, to frame your business in the best light, give parents some sense of the stability of the staff that work with you in your facility. So are you turning over employees every few months? That's going to be a cause for concern. So instead of championing that information, right? Because it's an indication that something is amiss that you need to work on, you can create a plan, figure out how you're going to reduce that rate, but then flip it and frame it on your website as something to the effect of, we are always seeking to create a community that is resilient, that is sustainable, and that builds rather than loses its people. To that end, we regularly update our employees, our staff, about training, professional development training opportunities that really train them to be better at their jobs, and also demonstrate to them that we care, and as a result they stay longer, or something to that effect. So it's clear that you're aware that high turnover is not a good thing. Your policies and your compliance history. What policies at a high level do you have that parents should know about? That could include anything from payment policies. It could include anything such as COVID policies and procedures. It will definitely include self-preservation tests, so like fire drills, because that is, as we all know, something that you are monitored for by the state. So at a high level, what policies do you have, and have you shared them with prospective parents? You don't need to share, again, all of your business, but at a high level, provide that information, because these types of things are always front of mind for parents, just swirling around in their minds. And so you want to demonstrate not only that you are on top of this information, but that you realize that they are always thinking about it. And so it's a foundation of communication and understanding, or empathy. So I look for this information, presuming that your homepage is appealing enough to the eye that I stay rather than run away. And then I make judgments about potential providers, including you, based on subjective and incomplete information. So as best as you try to get all of the information that you feel should be on your website, you can't include it all. If you did, you would have a really busy site that would probably make people run for the hills. So what do you do when you know that you can't include everything? You have to include, just at a high level, the basics and provide the visuals that are appealing. So ultimately, I have this information that I'm also sorting out against my own preconceived notions, whatever those notions may be. And then I'm faced with perhaps a fork in the road, so to speak. I can make a decision to inquire about your services, or even to decide if you have room for me, that based on reviews that I've heard word of mouth, based on reviews that I'm seeing on this site, I absolutely want to hire you as my childcare provider. Or I find that for whatever reason, I still have too little information to make a hiring decision. At this point, you lose my business, okay? Because whether I have information that I don't like or I have too little information, it's a no, okay? So are there any questions at this point yet? Okay. So then you want to ask yourself the question, are you providing and communicating beyond everything else that you've communicated, that you provide care or community? So I chose this picture because I thought it was quite whimsical and nice. And quite honestly, when I saw it as one of the photo options for the presentation, it made me feel good, okay? It made me feel really corny enough that I was part of a community. So while you do provide childcare, merely using this language can make what you do sound transactional. And we know that it's anything but. If you create and provide community, proclaim it, okay? In everything from your visuals to sound bites, if you have them, or you can record them and include them on your website, so that not only do you have written testimonials, but you also have recorded testimonials. Reading is great, but oftentimes humans find a lot more honesty in how people speak, in the intonation and inflection of their voices. So a spoken review, a spoken testimonial, oftentimes holds much more weight than one in writing. So the voice of the customer, parents' experiences as your business's guiding light. While you definitely want to use your own gut instincts and the training that you've gotten along your professional journey as an owner-operator of a childcare business, you also want to listen to the voice of the customer. Sometimes the voice of the customer is quite unclear, at least when you think of if there are any dots that connect to some kind of clear-cut, service or something that they may ask for in particular. But generally speaking, if you listen to what the customer or potential customer says, you'll be on the right path. So a few key matters to understand in terms of overwhelmingly what parents look for, what they think their considerations, as they are not only considering childcare options, but specifically considering this when they are looking at your website. 1, parents with children ages 0 to 6 are most discerning. This does not mean that parents of older kids do not care about their children, okay? Far from it. But the difference here, more often than not, unless you are discussing the needs of perhaps a family with a special needs child or children, where they may be older and they have greater communication needs. Typically speaking, parents with children from these ages, especially if it's their first child, are newer. They're either new or newer to parenthood. They cannot rely on the child to effectively communicate if something happens or makes them uncomfortable. They cannot rely on the child to effectively communicate if COVID-19 guidelines are not being followed to the extent recommended. So, how can you address these concerns on your site? Would it be more powerful if you have, just a blurb of writing? For some people, it could be. Admittedly, as a learner, I thrive when I read more so than when I see visuals. But for most people, they want to see and they want to hear. And so either with your phone, on your own, or in conjunction with perhaps an intern or a volunteer, or a co-op, a student at a local high school or a college or university, you can put together a really professional looking video or set of videos that you can place on your website. And you can communicate your answers to what you know are these unasked questions, okay? Very much thought of, but oftentimes unasked. And so the voice of the customer tells us that parents of younger children are really concerned. So as a parent, I'm, thinking these concerns over. And what I want more than almost anything from you as a potential provider is to set me, at ease. So that would perhaps look like something like a 5 to 7 second video clip explaining first that you empathize with me, that you understand whether you yourself have children or not. You can understand how honestly frightening it must be to entrust your child, who really can't do much of anything in terms of communication other than perhaps cry or babble, make some noise. They cannot tell you in a way that is easy for you to understand if something is going on or if something is amiss. So you set the stage for empathy. You acknowledge the concern, which is often, as I mentioned, unspoken. And then you say, look, we know this is a concern. So this is what we do to alleviate these concerns. We have set up in our childcare facility, a video, right? So that at any given point during the day, you could tune in to see what your child is doing. And we do this to accomplish the following objectives: to make you feel more at ease, to allow your child to see you and also feel more at ease, and to create a community of openness and of trust. So while you are not potential customers, therapists, you should always have the sense that everything you do, especially in your communications and your marketing, should be geared towards demonstrating that you are empathetic and that you take the executive action that's needed to alleviate these concerns and fears. Next, location matters. As it said in real estate, especially talking about places like New York City or San Francisco, wherever, location, location, location. If crime in your area is an unavoidable issue, parents want to know how you, as the provider, approach the safety and security of the children in your care and on your premises. This has become much more of a widespread communication, or a widespread issue deserving communication because of COVID. If you are not aware, I think it was just maybe 2 or 3 days ago that word got out that New York City's Mayor de Blasio has allowed schools, pretty much, New York City schools, to conduct classes outside of the school building and on sidewalks. And I think in at least one proposal, in certain streets that are blocked off. If you are not aware already, New York City indoor dining is not yet allowed. However, about a month or so ago, this city has started to allow for outdoor dining, much like we have here in Western New York and in the Finger Lakes, where streets are closed off and tables are brought in. So think of that. So then this consideration about crime and situational awareness and what goes on around you becomes that much more important, because there's no longer just the focus on, okay, our children inside of your facility, because they may very well be outside. So does that apply to you and perhaps to what your plans are? Even if it doesn't, what's the crime situation like in the neighborhood in which your facility resides? If it's something that you don't feel comfortable with, again, honesty is the best policy. Say something to the effect of, this is where we're located because we know you're gonna know anyway, and we have these policies and procedures in place. Okay, so it's not a big deal in the sense that it's something you can't overcome, because there are childcare businesses all over the country in all sorts of places with variable levels of crime. You just have to deal with it, and you have to be, again, honest and forthright, and have a plan for yourself as to how you address it and how you communicate it. So if it's something that you don't feel comfortable putting on the website beyond, we are located here, that's fine. And I wouldn't tell you to put anything disparaging on the website, but just be aware that, again, these are the types of things that parents are thinking about. So you have to anticipate them and speak to them. Okay. You should have an assessment that includes or considers multiple factors, including current events. So as I mentioned, the case in New York City, one of the things that parents have been really, really, I would say, up in arms about is the fact that during certain blocks on certain stretches of city blocks, there's a lot of speeding. So how do you ensure that even if you have a blocked off street, people don't come barreling through? What types of considerations that are new to you, because they are unprecedented given what's going on, do you have to consider and openly communicate? Again, not only for your own sake, not only for the sake of the children potentially who will be in your care, but also to demonstrate that you are thinking about these things. For self-preservation tests like fire drills, what procedure exists? And do you share it with prospective and or current client families? Again, you do not have to provide the whole world with all of the really intricate information about how you operate. But parents, especially those who are considering your services, do have a right to know what your plans are in place, what they look like. And you can provide that information with password protected pages that aren't only open to those who are current clients of yours. So this may look like having one page as a gateway or a login to your clients, and then having another page, for prospective families where they can get this information. And in order to get this information, they have to input their name and their email address. So if anything, you can have some sort of accounting of who is viewing that information. Census of all people with access to the space. So all individuals with access to your space must be cleared, of course, right? Situational awareness is crucial. Again, this is something that comes up routinely in surveys with parents who are evaluating different childcare options, especially as they see information relayed on the websites. So this goes more towards, again, what do you demonstrate in terms of policies and procedures? What words, and I hate to use the word buzzwords, but what highly visible, recognizable words convey to parents that you do not play around about random people just being, on the premises of your facility? And then lastly, think like an insurer. How can you de-risk your operations and demonstrate that? Take an inventory of your operations. Get someone to shadow your business and objectively assess how you can improve. So you may even find that you can link up with, a local agency, including some of what you can. So your local fire department, and have them, schedule with you a time for them to come in and check out your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors. And then include that information on your website under perhaps a category or a page that says safety or security, or safety and security. So they could see, oh, well, not only did we know that he had to have some measure of demonstrating that there are, these needed detectors, but they regularly get inspections, and I can see the inspection report, or whatever the case may be. So again, the name of the game is providing as much information that could put you and your business in the best light. And again, these are things that most providers do not put up on their websites, even though most parents say that this is the very information that they want. So again, go by the voice of the customer. Highlight how you go above and beyond. Okay. So at this point, it's going to get interactive, okay? And hopefully at some point, you will speak up and say if there's something that you like or dislike, because I'm going to try to put in both elements as we go through this exercise. So I use Squarespace for my websites. Okay. Let's see. We will go with, I don't know. Let me, think get started. Okay. So you're going to have to forgive me because admittedly it's been a hot minute since I've done my own website from scratch, but we're going to do it now. Okay. So we're at the get started point. Now, if you're using Wix or something else, it's going to vary, right? I've chosen Squarespace because I'm most familiar with Squarespace because I use it for my own business. And also because it's highly rated on account of the built-in, the built-in templates that they have, especially so that you can engage in online commerce, online sales. And aesthetically, it's really pleasing. Time and time again, some of the highest rated and awarded websites, especially of some of the biggest companies, are built on Squarespace. So you can look, if you don't have a website, or even if you have one and you want to jazz it up, I would suggest going by just a simple browse by popular designs, portfolios, photography, online stores, blogs, professional services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I am going to suggest as we go through this exercise is to, at least in the interest of time, start with a couple of them. We're going to start with professional services, okay? And you can just see right now the different templates that they have listed, oftentimes as being the most popular, okay? And then photography. I'm showing you photography because obviously you all are not photographers, though you may very well take many fun photos with the kids in your care. But again, to demonstrate that the name of the game is visuals as much as you can provide it. And so a photography template, a template that's been designed to really show off the skills of photographers, may very well be your best bet. But also a website that is geared towards showing off what a professional services company may also be incredibly advantageous as well. I would argue that for right now, the best bet is a professional services page, because you get the benefit of having the template provide you with the fonts and the language in some cases that you may want to use, with also the photography or the template that's really pleasing to the eye. So I'm hoping that somebody will speak up. I'm just going to slowly scroll through these options and tell me which one, based on their name, you would like me to click on, based on what applies or what appeals to you. And I'll scroll slowly. Okay. There were those few. Are there any that anybody in particular wants me to click on? Okay, so let's go with Almar. Okay, so for this, you could either fill it out immediately or you could skip it. Oftentimes what they're trying to do is they're trying to get as much information as possible to really inform their algorithm so that they can give you better service. So I am going to just breeze through here and get started. And I am going to say that, first of all, I'm going to click the edit button. And before I do anything else, again, I'm thinking right now as a parent, because I am a parent, what would I want to see when I come up on a childcare provider's website, a childcare provider that I may be choosing, that I may be hiring to watch my child or children? I am going to want to see smiling kids, happy kids, right? Staff is certainly important to me. but I am going to judge the most initially by whether I can relate to the first thing I see on a page when I get to it. And as a parent with little kids, I relate most to seeing little kids. So I'm going to click on this edit button. And this is the default picture that's right here. I'm going to delete it. If I have, you know, if you have other pictures that you may want to use that you are permitted to use, legally permitted to use, then feel free to use those. But you can also search for photos that Squarespace already has. Now they do indicate, as I'll show you, after I search for smiling child, they are partnered with a website called Unsplash. And Unsplash, like other websites, like for instance, Pexels, and I'll put that right here in the chat for you, Pexels.com is a site that provides really beautiful premium photography for free at no cost to you. Whether you use Pexels or you use what Squarespace has, pretty much both of them will tell you what the rules of engagement, so to speak, are with regard to using those. That's a cute kid. Okay, using the photo. So for instance, here it says the image is provided by a third party called Unsplash. It is not provided by Squarespace. By clicking add to site, you are agreeing to Unsplash's terms and you understand that you are publishing the image and are responsible for it. So oftentimes on sites like Unsplash or Pexels, they will say that you can use a photograph, but you have to provide proper credit, proper attribution, right? Which is just saying source : John Smith, or you know, whatever the name may be. So you have at your disposal all of these images. I'll even put in daycare. Okay. And so we get a number of photos that pop up. And actually, I think this is really cute too. So I'll add it to the site. Okay. Increasingly, there are more stock photos that have children and or staff wearing masks. However, nobody's gonna hold it against you if your photos on your website don't include that, because it's just not abundant yet. So you can have a picture like this, and what you want to think of as you're evaluating what to do, things like color contrast. Okay, if you get to a website, and you may know what I'm talking about, that's from like the late 90s, where it's really, really hard on the eyes contrast, like a black background and then yellow writing or something like that. It gives you a headache, okay? If what you look at gives you yourself a headache, it's most certainly going to give a perfect stranger a headache, or it's not going to be appealing to them. So you want to look at things like color contrast. So you may say to yourself, okay, as adorable as this little girl is with her little play camera, this isn't the picture for our purposes. What is going to have a better you know, contrast for writing? So then you could say, okay, well, how about this one? All right, and then add it to the site. And even if this isn't perfect, we're going to continue on. All right, so there, this actually does look much better. So then we say, okay, well, rather than name your website, at least right here, what your business's name is, what's something that's inviting? What's something that may be a bit intriguing? What's something that is going to spark enough curiosity in the 50 milliseconds that you'll have to capture a site visitor's attention to really get them to be like putty in your hands, like, you know what, I want to learn more. You could say anything that you think is appropriate or helpful. I would say, just for the purpose of this exercise, we can start with writing something like, more than childcare. We are a community, right? To go off of the theme that we were talking about before. And then here you can, edit this so that you can include either the link to a page that you want them to go to register their interest in you, or a direct, link to your email. But you want something that's inviting, want something that is not only, just information, but really a calling. And up here, you can provide your logo. Okay. You can add it like here, like right there. For those who are signed up with Logo Maker, Squarespace. Okay. It's not coming up, but you can get a logo made with Squarespace, okay, for free. Now, as my grandfather used to say, free is not really free in most cases, right? Because somehow you're paying for it, and you're paying for it in that whatever monthly amount you pay for your site, you also get the benefit of being able to use their logo maker, and their logo maker is actually very nice. So keep that in mind. I do not recall if Wix will allow you to do that, but Squarespace does. So whatever your logo is, and if you don't have a logo, I strongly encourage you to create one, because it helps you to build name brand recognition. You include that there, right? And then you work your way down. Now, visualize for yourself, and it's easy enough to do because we're looking at a website right now. This part, before you scroll down anywhere, this part, this block, is the most important part of your website, because it is the first thing that somebody, a site visitor, is going to see, okay? So you want to focus on that. You want it to be something that's really going to make the site visitor feel good about what they're seeing. And then assuming they're feeling good about what they're seeing, they're going to naturally scroll down. They're going to peek behind the curtain, so to speak. So then you include another teaser, right? Or at least more information. It could be something about you. This picture, instead of this woman, pretending that she's laughing, in a car, it could be a picture of you, or a picture of the inside of your facility where there's a circle time going on. Anything that is going to up the ante and make the site visitors say, you know what, I made a really great decision by scrolling, okay? And then you provide a little bit more info. So, on the spot, and then we'll move on. We can include circle time and see if anything comes up. No, so that comes, so children in a circle. And this is being a little difficult. So children. Okay. So you get everything from really, really sweet, but not so active, to really active shots. Let's go with, let me see. Even though this would likely not be the best shot because it's not realistic, right? We're going to include it for the time being. Okay, then I'm going to apply it. And then here, say, if you have you know, an academic slant or lean to what you're doing, you could say something to the effect of, or at least to get the point across, play-based learning, or where play-based learning meets, you know, your child's curiosity, or whatever the case may be, whatever language is most applicable to what you bring to the table. And don't try to fake it, right? Because you do best when you're real. So do whatever you do best. Convey that just in really, really short, bite-sized language with stunning visuals. And then your site visitor will continue and continue to scroll. And at some point, and this is a perfect example, they want to get to reviews. And if you recall from a few slides back, the first thing that I mentioned that parents look for, in addition to not being given a migraine because of awful color contrast on your website, is they want to see reviews. They want to see the word of the people, so to speak, okay? So you provide this information. Now this is just static text, but you could also do it so that it's like a carousel, and that you know, testimonials come by on a timetable that you decide. So I think the options are 1 second, every 1 second, every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. I think it may go up to a minute, okay? And then as you can see here, everything really is included for you. You just have to put in the information that is relevant to your business. What I would recommend, however, is to not have signups, whether it's for a mailing list or otherwise, just at the bottom. Because when you're dealing with parents who have young kids especially, you never know what's going on. So there are numbers of occasions where I've been on a website looking for something, and I'm scrolling, and then I get distracted. And then one of my kids gets my phone or my iPad, and then I've lost the site. And now I'm trying to remember what site it was before I had an opportunity to get my information in so that I could stay in touch with that site. All of that to say, certainly have, you know, sign up information there, but then also have it, and you can duplicate it, also have it up here or there. So you can adjust it. You can do whatever you want to do, whatever you find appealing, okay? So that's what Squarespace's setup looks like. If there's anybody who would like to set up a Squarespace site and needs assistance, please indicate that in the chat, and just put in Squarespace assistance. Okay. So then, now that you know the basics of at least Squarespace and what you need to be considering as you build out your website or revamp your website, you need to figure out how to effectively convey your public health and safety conscious differentiators, okay? Because that information, the information that you learned last week certainly doesn't help if, I'm trying to figure out, okay, there, doesn't help you if it's not conveyed, especially on social media. So your approach to vetting, integrating parents and childcare providers considerations. So is that placed on your website? And to go back, try again. Okay, we'll do this. You want to include this someplace on the front page. And you want to demonstrate how you are de-risking as much as possible. You can do this for yourself to de-risk your operations. You don't need somebody else to do it for you, though there certainly are individuals and organizations that can help you with this. And you want to demonstrate how you're de-risking, demonstrate your conscientiousness. From last week, we went over how you are overcoming and thinking about and communicating not only to yourself, but internally to your employees, health risks, safety risks, personnel and operations risks. But now is your opportunity to demonstrate your proficiency and competencies and gathering all this information and acting on it for the people who may become your clients, and hopefully they will. So I'm not going to go over all of this information, but what I will encourage you to do, especially as you get your website together, is to include really what I would call the bonus sites, right? The bonus links, the ones that not only will help you differentiate yourself in a sea of websites that really aren't providing the information they should be providing based on, based on really following the voice of the customer, but they're also helpful just to parents in their own right, right? So cleaning solutions that are child-oriented. This is the website, if you were with us last week, if you recall, from the Environmental Protection Agency, which is not limited to being beneficial to just childcare providers. Parents can benefit from this to see, okay, well, what do I have? What do I have in my supply, in my cleaning supply cabinet? Does it pass muster, so to speak? You want to review your record, your compliance history, as well as your, background check for your sake and theirs. Now, oftentimes people hear about just checking up on what's going on with your record or your history, more so in the context of like credit checks, especially if you haven't ever checked your credit report. You may miss a lot of things that shouldn't be in there to begin with, to really advocate on your behalf. In a similar fashion, you don't want to not know what's continually going on with the people you work with, okay? And so it's in everybody's best interest to stay on top of this information. Like I said, this information is easily accessible, though not many people access it, but increasingly parents are. So like, for instance, in New York State, you can confirm business licensure or registration of a childcare business with the appropriate licensing authority, okay? Your vetting process should go beyond what the state has in place, because again, the state has a minimum, which is fine, it's appreciated, right? There's a floor. But you always want to elevate what you're doing. You always want to do better. There's nothing wrong with trying to be an overachiever, especially when an overachiever in this context is doing the best job possible to serve the needs of children and their families. So you want to make sure that everything that is in your record is something that's been taken care of. If you have any blemishes, own up to it. Don't try to lie about it. Don't try to explain it away. If you have something more than a blemish, the most serious things, typically wind up impacting your license and your registration. But if you have, say, for instance, an issue where you don't have adequate records or documentation of say, self-preservation tests, like fire drills, just figure out, if with assistance if needed, how you're gonna keep that together so you don't have another violation, which goes back to webinar 1, all about organization and digitizing your records. So things like that. Your vetting process, or a parent's vetting process, doesn't really start with them. It starts with you, because you should always be aware of the information that's in your background, as well as the information internally that's in the background of the people you hire. I've decided to use just one example of a review that was placed on Yelp. In the previous version of this webinar, I used, but I crossed out the personally identifiable information, a negative review, okay? But for this one, I'm just going to focus on the positive. So looking at this review, I'm just going to read a bit of it so you can get a flavor for what I'm getting at. 5 stars, right? So that's the ultimate. That's superlative, just the best of the best. My son is a busy, active, wiggly little guy who has trouble sitting still during circle time, and he often demands justification for why he has to sit still, etc. Despite these challenges, the teachers at JLU have been patient, optimistic, and encouraging. He truly feels loved and cared for, and I love bringing him. Because he is so loved, he has grown emotionally and is on his way to being a strong student. He has thrived in their program and is definitely kindergarten ready. He can count to 100, knows over 30 sight words, can sound out words, knows common and some peripheral Bible stories by heart, knows all of his shapes and colors, and sometimes the colors I don't even know that are in the Crayola box, and he has learned to love learning. And then I'm going to go towards the end. The curriculum, the greatest benefit besides their emphasis on a quality curriculum, there's that word again, curriculum. I've been teaching for 22 years, so I'm picky about that, or I'm picky about the curriculum, and it gets cut off, but before it gets cut off, it says, is the emphasis they place on behavior. They ... So it all comes together. You see quite literally the visual and the feeling that most people, would get from seeing a perfect review, right? Perfect is perfect. It's a glowing review. And what they do that's so neat about this review, and that's so helpful if you get testimonials like this and you place them prominently on your website, is that it says, look, we love our kid more than anything in this world, but we also know that our kid is a little busybody. We know that our kid does not like to sit down. But despite that, despite the challenge of getting a wiggly little guy, as they call him, despite the challenge of getting a wiggly little guy to sit still during circle time, they're able to do it. Whatever magic that they're working with, they're able to do it. And they do it, and the result is X, Y, and Z. And I'm not only bringing the credibility into this review because I am my child's parent, but because I am also a teacher of 22 years. So there's that mix of information that applies to, or review information that applies to the heart and that which applies to the mind. So when you try to get testimonials from people, really try to get testimonials that speak to both the heart and the mind, and say, look, we've been caring for your child or for your children for a number of years now, perhaps if that may be the case, maybe a couple years. Would you mind writing us a review that speaks to, how you feel about the job that we're doing, and how you know that your child is safe or taken care of, whatever words you want to use. And then you use that. And then if there are cases, as there very well may be, because nobody's perfect, where you get a not so glowing review, whether you've asked for one or not, assess it, evaluate it, be honest with yourself about it. See where in your operations, assuming that the review is just completely fictitious, where there is room for improvement and perhaps even innovation, depending on what the issue is. Moving forward, a quick return to webinar 2. With everything swirling around in parents' minds, still at front of mind is COVID, right? You want to include on your website, and again, this is what I mentioned, I believe, last time. You want to make sure it's clear for all to see, for your employees, your staff, current families, prospective families, that you provide information that's tailored not only to the needs of the parents that you serve, the prospective parents who are increasingly interested about your services, but also your employees in terms of what resources you can provide to them that will make them that much better, professionally speaking, to care for the children in your business's care, so that it confirms for the parents who entrust you with their children that you are the right person and that they made a good bet on you, and that it encourages prospective clients to continue their inquiries and to ultimately reach out to you and hire you. Demonstrate not only what you do and how you do it, but your continuous activities and plans to improve. So take clients and prospective clients on a visual journey of your future plans. Prominently provide testimonials on your homepage as mentioned. And then continue the theme of greatness by demonstrating how you plan to build a better future, or how you plan to allow those who join your community, again, there's that word, to travel with you to a brighter future. Lay out planned milestones and what they mean for the families you serve and or hope to serve. So often, not only in the preparation for this webinar, but also in my work previously as program manager at RIT Center for Urban Entrepreneurship, I would hear business owners, a couple of whom were childcare providers, but most weren't, speak fondly and vividly about their plans and what they plan to do in a few months and what they hope and plan to do in a year or 5 years. And do you think any of those plans really ever made it to the ears or to the eyes to be read by their current customers or clients, or by those they hope to land? No. The best part of communicating what you're good at includes communicating that you've got a great imagination and that you can execute on your imagination and accomplish things that are not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of your business and, of course, the benefit of those to whom you are providing service, an invaluable service at that. So again, through beautiful AI, for instance, which is what the app is that I'm using to put this presentation together, you can create a very brief but nice looking timeline, a chronology of what you as a business owner plan to accomplish that's going to serve the best interests of the children in your care. So do you plan to revamp, and you could start as small as you need to because everything's meaningful. Do you plan on revamping a bookshelf with books perhaps that maybe, that include new offerings, that include not only books that are geared towards teaching, like ABCs or something, but also teaching, something that can help with kids coping through what they've been going through the past few months. If you're not thinking of creating a bookshelf with new offerings, are you perhaps thinking of brightening up the walls in your facility, whether it's a daycare center or a home, but especially in a home because presumably you have more control there? If you're thinking of painting it up, not just to paint it, but to give it a better color, a happier color, whatever the case or story may be, communicate that. Let parents and prospective parents in on your mind, on your thoughts, on how you know that you can improve your business and how those improvements will spill over into wonderful effects for their children. Allow them to build a better future with you, or to allow them to travel with you to create a brighter future. Community networks and entrepreneurial service providers. Don't think of marketing as something that you do by yourself. Never think of something that you do by yourself. Even if you are a one-person team, right? Or a one-person operation. Inherent in marketing is the idea that the information isn't meant to be squashed. It isn't meant to be kept, right? Just to you. It's meant to be shared. And there are entrepreneurial service providers and networks, okay, community, there's that word again, that are willing, that are able, that are happy, that are mission driven to help you in multiple ways, including with your marketing efforts. So I'll start with the obvious. Pathstone Enterprise Center, okay? They have Small Business Friday Forum. which is an informal forum in which business owners come together to speak about any number of topics. The Fridays do have topics that are pre-selected, but within that, there's always time to ask your own questions that may not fall within the designated or pre-selected topic. It's a free opportunity to learn, to market in the best way by really caring and being empathetic about what other people are going through, offering them information and counsel, and having them do the same in turn. And by just showing up as a person who cares, as a business owner who cares, and by sharing information, you individually start to create and strengthen your name brand recognition. And ultimately, the most powerful marketing, word of mouth, becomes that much easier. They have an e-newsletter. And since you are signed up for this webinar, you know all about it and you get it, and they're wonderful. If you are doing something that is relevant to what Pathstone is seeking to achieve, and you are, or else we would not be having this webinar series, let them know. Reach out if you have some new service or product that can help out the community, especially during this time. Do not sit on your accomplishments or what you can provide as a meaningful service. The worst that's going to happen, whether it's Pathstone or another service provider, is for them to say, either we can't do that for whatever reason, or we can do that on this timetable. So even if it's a delayed marketing win, it's a marketing win nevertheless. Inquire as to whether you could pay a nominal one-time fee to have your services advertised. I personally have never tried this with Pathstone or with any service providers, but you can see if that's something that can be done, especially those that are mission aligned, and perhaps there can be some kind of approach, an innovative approach, so that businesses that have been aided by a service provider can pay a nominal or scaled fee for advertising services that can then help the very community from which they got assistance to pay it forward. Offer a promotion or a trial so decision makers can better understand what you're offering and how you differentiate yourself and your business. So again, there's that word, differentiation. How are you different? How are you positively different? With all that's going on, what are you doing to up the ante? RITQ, as I mentioned. I'm not going to repeat everything that's right here, but they are a wonderful resource, and they are a partner to Pathstone. SBA, again, another partner to Pathstone, another theme or trend here. They are underutilized, okay? So feel free, again, to reach out to them. The Chamber of Commerce has a service and a website that is incredibly underutilized, but it is very slick, very helpful, and you can't go wrong with it. You can participate in their virtual events and in-person events when appropriate and when they start up again, to network and develop name brand recognition. But in this case, it's not only at the local level, it's more so at the national level. And if you recall from participation, or just from seeing the slide presentation deck and recording from webinar 1 on organizing your business, and included in that organization is getting information, one of the resources mentioned was the Federal Register. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, those involved in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and those involved in the Federal Register and Congress and all of the alphabet soup bureaucracies, they interact with one another. And you certainly want to put yourself in a position to be seen, again, name brand recognition, so that your marketing is not only a means for getting more business and preserving the business you have, but of also, if you are up to the task and you want to do it, sharing your experiences, thoughts, knowledge, and skills to become a thought leader in what you're doing. Because Lord knows that at this time, more so than any other time, we need more thought leaders who are childcare providers to share what they know. Promise Venture Studio, as I mentioned before, is a nonprofit venture studio that attracts, supports, and connects promising entrepreneurial talent, capital, and stakeholders to pave the way, as they say, for the sustainable growth and impact of social entrepreneurship and early childhood development. By building a diverse community of social entrepreneurs and a healthy ecosystem of early childhood ventures, we can inspire change, accelerate impact, and improve child outcomes. So they are very helpful. And for any or perhaps even all of the grievances that you may have as a childcare provider about things that you wish you could do, things you want to do, things that aren't done, perhaps things that are done that don't work within the industry, they are a big part in changing the status quo and in supporting those who want to make change in their individual businesses in various innovative ways that aren't on a grand scale necessarily, but that are impactful at the local level, because that's how change best takes hold and is actually enduring, right, at the local level. Lastly, for the last minute, some benefits of supplementing what you're going to do with your website with childcare platforms. For providers, it provides a centralized online location for you all to find parents in search of care providers. And it's a decreased time investment needed to market your services in the traditional way, perhaps with flyers and such to parents. For parents, again, it's a centralized location to find providers. And again, decreased investment, decreased time investment there. For community members, including elected officials, it provides constant awareness of community leadership where there are gaps in childcare from which to make improvements through public-private partnerships. So one thing that I constantly see is that the Western New York Finger Lakes region doesn't have nearly as much activity in quality or in quantity of participants on these platforms. And that's for a number of reasons. But it's helpful if only to show that there are improvements to be made. While you should be focusing a lot on your website, in addition to how you get out your word of mouth marketing apparatus, the community is involved in marketing these types of services, your services. So ensure that they get that information, which goes back to working with service providers. Calculate your business's ROI of paid childcare platforms. Okay, so word of mouth, whether you're doing an approach that's social media driven or a hybrid approach that's both, you want to do those to supplement what you're going to do with your website. And optimize your strengths by engaging parents when they're most primed for communication. Again, word of mouth, social media driven, or hybrid approach, all of these are predicated on speaking to people when they want to be spoken to or engaged with. So you want to ask the parents who you are currently serving, when do you actually like to get emails? When do you actually look up things that, are related to childcare? Is it first thing in the morning, perhaps before anybody wakes up? Is it during your lunch break as you're trying to, eat some food? Is it at the tail end of the day, right before you're going to turn down for some rest? When is it? Because that's going to initially chart your course for how you engage with people, including any newsletters you may put together. Okay. And that concludes the third webinar in the series and the series. A lot of information, to be sure, but I encourage you to ask any questions now or put any questions in the chat. If you would like assistance with putting together a website to help you with your marketing endeavors, we can certainly help you with that at no cost to you through Pathstone's technical assistance. Just indicate, either in the chat or via email. Please do take the survey that will go out no later than tomorrow. And through that survey, you will get a final opportunity to indicate whether you would like any assistance based on what is offered. If there are no questions now, thank you for joining us and thank you for participating. I hope the information has been meaningful and has helped you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.